And for our next presenter, she is the current director of the Cebuano City Center and a full professor of comparative literature at the Department of Communications, Linguistics, and Literature of the University of San Carlos, where she teaches both graduate and undergraduate courses. She was past chair of the Division of the Humanities of the National Research Council of the Philippines, or NRCP, and the National Committee on Literary Arts of the National Commission for Culture and the Arts. A creative writer, she is a member of the Women in Literary Arts Cebu, the Bathalanong Halad sa Dagang, or Bathalad, and the Mabugnaong Anak sa Dagang. She currently serves as the commissioner for the Cebuano language of the Komisyon sa Wikang Filipino and is also a commissioner of the Cultural and Historical Affairs Commission. She is a member of the Technical Committee on Literature of the Commission on Higher Education and the editor-in-chief of Tugkad, a literary and cultural studies journal. She works part-time in translation. So let us all give a round of applause for Dr. Hope Sabanpan-Yu.
Good afternoon, everyone. Amayong hapon sa tanan. So my line of discipline is really literary and cultural studies. So, mas literature-focused takaron instead of the teaching module. And my paper has to do with the poetry of 3 Cebuana writers who are also members of the Women in Literary Arts. Now, next slide, please. Doreen Fernandez in Tikim, Essays on Philippine Food and Culture, says that in the act of eating, we ingest the environment. But we do not stop at that. For we Filipinos make eating the occasion for ritual and ritual the occasion for eating. So we build ceremony around it and we create celebration. Diba? When it's eating time, it's always an occasion for joy. So the experience of food is ephemeral, and Doreen Fernandez also says that what one puts into the mouth is the end result of a process that starts with the sea, the soil, animal life, and I think we take it for granted. We just eat. We don't even think about this. So in the act of cooking, we make statements about ourselves, about our understanding of relationships between ingredients, about our perception of taste and appropriateness. Next slide, please. So these are the 3 women writers. We have Dr. Erlinda Alburo, past chair of the Women in Literary Arts. Cora Almerino, who is now based in the United States, and recently she's a multi-awarded poet. Actually, all of these women are multi-awarded poets. And Ester Tapia, who is based in Germany, but they all write in Cebuano. And the poems that I will be discussing are already translations into English, but they have their original Cebuano versions. So the poetry on food by these women is representative of this notion that the culture of a place is a blend of understanding the relationships between the land and its people, food being the connection between these in their writing. So next slide, please. Eating practices construct. Is that the old one? It's the that one. Okay. So eating practices construct identity, and though many social scientists have examined the symbolic importance of food, it is more focused on being an expression of regional identity. And we've been talking about this, how, you know, lechon is tied to Cebu, but there's also lechon in Manila, or how puso is like iconic Cebuano, but there's also like puso in other areas, but they're called by different names. And, you know, there are all these, even the siomai sa tisa and all of that. Now, next slide. Since food functions as a metaphor, wala mang kwan. Since food functions as a metaphor within a culture, it represents values and beliefs about a place, identity, and social order. And poetry seems to be the most logical place to deeply explore these symbolic associations, because you can see that in how it's expressed in a poem, no? And Cebuano society provides its food. Okay, that one. Next slide. So poets generally, and most of you here write, I have several friends here in the audience who are also poets, write in they work on the province of metaphor. So I'm sure that all of you know what a metaphor is. And they knowingly explore the images and concepts expressive of their cultures, and food has shown itself to be one of the most relevant symbols for examination. So a poet working with significant symbolic ideas of place and gender employs food to probe values with it. And one example is Corazon Almerino. Now, I have 2 poems of hers. Next slide. Spaghetti alla carbonara, and its quite shocking companion, unsaon paggisa sa bana nga manghulga sa asawa nga dili kay balong muluto. Okay? So, Almerino is actually interested in examining the topic and interrogating the associations in Spaghetti alla Carbonara and this other poem. So much of what she writes about seeks to express the complex feelings of oppression and empowerment. So first, yung empowerment adto ta sa Spaghetti alla Carbonara, found in connection with women and food. So next slide, we have the Spaghetti alla Carbonara. I'm sure all of you have tasted this, but let's look at the associations that Almerino puts in this poem. Next slide. So she has many symbolic meanings of food, and in the beginning of the poem, you see here, the persona has no experience of tasting spaghetti especially as alla carbonara, no, kay naman tayo spaghetti alla Jollibee. So being used, because the persona here must be used to something like Jollibee, kay tomato-based pasta sauces raman, traditional Cebuano mix of ground meat and hot dog and cheese, which we can find here. But carbonara is what? How is carbonara different? A white sauce, very good. Sayang, wala ko'y daghan prices kay kanong nanubag, tagaan tamog price. So now, it was only last Wednesday, this is the continuation of the poem. It was only last Wednesday night that I tasted spaghetti alla carbonara. It has a different flavor, no tomato sauce, eggs, sliced bacon, and Parmesan cheese are the ingredients. Most of the spaghetti I had tasted before were red, mixed with hot dog, cheese. Mo naman di ito. Okay, next slide please. And continuing, note there's a caps, yun na siya ha, that's not a typo. Upon the discovery of G, that I was not accustomed to the pasta, he at once invited me to his apartment. He said he would cook for me spaghetti alla carbonara. True enough, I was there last Wednesday night. While we ate, I caught him glancing furtively my way. It happened again and again, until our words grew shorter, until we gazed at each other long. Okay, next slide. Asan naman to? What happened to my... I stood up and he followed. I moved to the wall where I leaned back. He stood in front of me. By using erotic imagery here, the woman equalizes the sensual positions as she takes the lead and the man follows, di ba? It's she who takes the lead. Then echoing the metaphors that relate only to a pleasurable experience, she says, we spoke again, next slide, we spoke again with butterflies for words. Then we laughed loud. The silence caught our laughter, and again we gazed into each other's eyes long. So the center in all of these lines is the sensuality of eating and the act of gaining power that is focused on the persona's growth. Butterflies for words may refer to what? Very light what? What can it refer to? Butterflies for words. Maybe I should not corrupt your imaginations because you're still young. Kisses. Oh, did I hear kisses? Yes. Or light caresses. And the pleasure of resonating in the laughter, Almerino gives the persona agency through control, not just over the pleasures of her own body, but also that of the man to enjoy as well. Okay. So, next slide. I closed my eyes because this is the end of the poem. And only then did I understand the taste of spaghetti alla carbonara. In his hands and tongue had been hidden all along the singular flavor. So, wow, that blows your mind. Will you ever be able to eat spaghetti alla carbonara without thinking about this poem again? Or maybe you will date a special someone, print this poem, and date that special someone and give a copy of this poem after the date. So the symbolism of the mouth is very significant, as it not only centers on consuming spaghetti, but it also is through the mouth and on the hands and on the tongue that she tastes the distinct flavor. So see, the flavor is like synesthetic, no? The sense of another being consumed is so intense that Almerino goes so far as to link the experience of eating to that of kissing and making out. Are you all 18? So by comparing the joy of eating and the enjoyment of her own pleasure, Almerino reclaims the pleasures of a woman's body and rejects the idea that a woman should be passive. Okay, so I will do a turn around here because the next poem is going to be a bit different. How to saute a husband who berates his wife who doesn't know how to cook. Okay? This is this is troubled territory, and it's a problem of domestic abuse. So let's go straight to the poem. Okay? Heat oil in a frying pan, saute onions and garlic, immerse the fists. Sorry, for typo na siya, fist na. That he will punch your face with. Do likewise with the feet that he will kick you with. Mix in other parts of his body, bring to a boil, pierce with a fork, better with a knife, season with curses and maledictions, taste, remove from the fire, eat, if no good, throw to the dogs. Wow. But when Almerino published this several years ago, I think it's a decade ago or what, this was it caused quite a sensation because the food in this poem becomes a metaphor for giving just desserts to a husband who, what does he do to his wife? Abuse. He abuses his wife, he batters his wife, specifically the slow, tense build-up of cutting the body parts and cooking them over the fire. So a man can batter his wife, but she can turn the tables and chop him to pieces, curse him while cooking all the body parts, and feed them to the dogs. Diba? So, guys, that's a warning also. Now, the persona in this poem creates food that is a female-specific source of agency to give voice to the desire to fight back. Pierce with a fork, better with a knife, season with curses and malediction. So women have access to power in the same way that they have access to food. If they have constructed spaces within the previously exploited roles of wife and cook, writing about cooking can become empowering as a venue for resistance and of liberation. So here Almerino has created a symbolic place of power for women in the kitchen. Okay. Now I have another poem. This one is, it's about female agency and power, and I will be talking about Erlinda Alburo. who talks specifically of food characteristics and staples in Are We Going Back to Badyan? Next slide. So, in the poem, who is from Badyan or who has gone to Badyan or gone to the south? Okay. How about the kids? Wala. So, would someone like to read this? Sige, Trisha, please. Asa mang mic? Para naasag ko yung audience participation, magduka-duka niya mo diha. Okay.
Are we going back to Badyan? You know this picture is a good shot. We're lined up in front of the old car. Its flaking pant bared, what a pity. But our faces are all smiles or laughing. After 2 days of picnicking up and down, Corazon Falls boating around Badyan Island, then feasting on raw fish in Matutinao kiosk.
Next slide. Continue.
Okay.
Next slide.
True, we had a flat tire 4 times, no less. But wasn't the tuba at Moalboal good? We stopped by Dumanhog for a CR, had a nap. While a fresh breeze brushed our faces, and the sights of Barili were delightful, like the spaces green with grass and mangrove.
And continue.
Next time, let's buy again some sticky pop rice. At Karkar, pair of takoy with shakoy and gorgoreas. But oh, don't we also pass the big dakit tree? Along the cliff where they pushed Mary Joy, I say why not Talisay instead of Badyan? We can't afford it anyway, and our car has retired.
Okay, thank you very much, Trisha. So you see here, it's like we are taken around the south of Cebu. And in the original poem, the reference is to the kinilaw, which is a staple that we find on the coast, but we also in our household. So then they have a stopover at Moalboal, and the persona praises the tuba, or the coconut palm toddy, which they drank as a good one. Alburo also uses the rituals and images associated with this food to showcase the region, because actually it's like, in Karkar, you can find this, and make a specific personality for the southern parts of Cebu. So there is a sense of only being a Cebuano that allows you access to understand the personal and cultural history of Cebu. And I actually have another poem in the paper that I wrote for this conference. There is another poem, but I know that I only have limited time, so I will go straight to the next poem of Ester Tapia, which is Pandesal, Pandeleche, Francis, and Bitoon. These are different kinds of bread. And this demonstrates the Cebuano identity represented in the different kinds of bread and linking it to daily rituals based on the persona's experience. So next slide, you have the experience of the persona where she reminisces on the texture of each kind of bread, sharing with the reader her sense of delight. Pandesal, ensamada, bituon, and Francis. Frances, di ay na. Francis man na ito itawag, papalita hog Francis be. Fragrant and so tempting, the crunchy tail of a star. Di ba? Kay kagumkum man ng koan. So this daily ritual has been interrupted for some time, as stated in the subtitle, because of the pandemic. Oh, nangatug na mo diha, ha? So, no one meets the delivery boy since the month has gone into the pandemic, and the persona is isolated. She's in the second floor of the house, longing for the taste of her favorite bread. And next slide. So when would I taste? Mao na. So, naghuwat na lang siya kay, di man, unsa gani itong kuan sa pandemic, no, you have to be isolated, no contact. So, when would I taste again my favorites, and the rust on the gates would fall, and the powder from the buds of the tambis be swept away. So you see this deep longing of the persona, and eating food specific to a locale, to a region, to a place. need some insider knowledge of all the culture. But one needs to be aware as well of whatever stereotypes are made to mix with food, such as, I think Dr. Mojares had mentioned this, dog eaters. Di ba? Ingon sila, Filipinos are dog eaters. And these other stereotypes. So we have to be very careful about that. Though in the poetry examples that I mentioned here, there is none that applies to that. Next slide. So the Cebuano poets here portray women in food preparation as claiming the kitchen as a source of empowerment as well as a means to navigate the region where the shared understanding turns into insider knowledge and a uniting source of agency. Food can provide a connection to the past as well as to the community, and it can transform memory into a sense of pleasure. It can also remind readers to think about food with the complexity that it deserves. So the next time you eat, I know we are all in a rush sometimes. Asus, I have to be in class or gadalita, but always take the time to savor food because it's different when you feel nourished by the food that you eat. All right, so I end my presentation there. Thank you for...
Thank you very much, Dr. Hope Sabanpan-Yu.